Went over to a couple of shops with all the traffic going on now that it's got less restrictions in places like here in Colorado. Traffic's awful. So I decided just to go to two places. It's my day off. It's Saturday the 14th. Happy Free Comic Book Day. I be that Sequential Geek. Welcome to my channel. Let's get on with it. I got so many comics. Went to two shops. Got all these comics. First one, Hall of Justice. They had like a moonwalk for kids. It was packed. There was a line inside. I was like, screw this. They had comics by the pound out in the parking lot. No protection from the sun. So with me, I was like, screw that. That asphalt, that heat. They were selling Free Comic Book Day Red Rums for $10 a pop. The line was so long, they had a 30% discount. I figured $7 a piece, I'll get two. The line was too long. So I went to Vision Comics and Oddities. Hall of Justice was like southeast of Denver, and went southwest to Inglewood to Vision Comics and Oddities, and you got 3 Free Comic Book Day comics. If you spend any more than $5, for every $5 you get another Free Comic Book Day comic over at Vision Comics and Oddities. For every $5 you spend at that point. They had 50% off, $20 and under. 20% off anything above that, pretty much, I think. Yeah, $116, so we're talking... That Hero Gasm, Free Comic Book Day. Definitely adults only. How long is this video going to be with all these comics, huh? So this was strictly like a cover by Netzger. Excuse me, Michael Netzer did this cover. Cover date January 1981. The specters of the 60s are back. Is that a little bit of a zeitgeist about to go on here at this cover or what? Not much peace, love, happiness going on right here. Look at Spider-Man. Couple of club stickers I got here on this comic book box, by the way. Local Trekkie chapter deal that's all over the United States. These people, they have these Starfleet chapters. I think it's nonprofit. It's a .org, as you can see, and they had a couple of different types of bumper stickers they were handing out. It's mind over antimatter. Star Wars Fan Club, official Star Wars Fan Club 2009, and it's a Lucasfilm Limited trademark, museumreplicas.com. So just a couple little club stickers that I got right there from the big two sci-fi franchises. Now you might have seen that video footage I've shown a couple of times of Kilgore Books and Comics. It's out in Capitol Hill area of Denver, downtown. And Noah Van Sciver's published a lot of works out of Kilgore Books. And it's up to 10 issues they printed. Last one was September, cover date 2018. That was issue number 10. Find anything earlier, and this issue number 4 is it's a nice treat to be able to find. It's a $4 cover price. Got that for $2. DMZ, the final issue, issue number 72. It's a cover date of February 2012. So it came out pretty much the end of 2011. And that cover is by Jean-Paul Leon. He was doing the covers from 52 onwards till the end here. And previous to that, you would have some covers by the interior artist, Riccardo Burchielli, but mainly they were done by the writer, Brian Wood. Check out the early issues of DMZ. Get a taste of Brian Wood's work. It's really nice. And this is something that could easily be cinematic. It's another one of these stories that's kind of like Briggs Land and Cal Exit. Not necessarily like post-apocalyptic, more like post-Americana, post-Civil War Americana type of angle. More about lifestyle and living through it, dealing with it, than the politics behind it, at least with DMZ. This reporter goes into Manhattan to cover a story, and Manhattan has turned into a DMZ, a demilitarized zone. It's kind of like a neutral zone, a buffer, part of this buffer zone, part of this neutral zone between these two factions in New England and America. So he gets stuck there, and he's then experiencing what it's like in these different boroughs that have become self-sufficient in more ways than one. It's really interesting, and the attention to detail in the way that they depict just clothing, lifestyles, behavior. It is definitely non-mainstream in some of the best ways. Please check out DMZ. Don't get turned off that it's just some run that ended at 72. Kind of like Why the Last Man, which was out of Vertigo, another Vertical label. It's just the length of the story. Had nothing to do with it being canceled. Really. Check out Brian Wood, DMZ, and this interior artist, Burchielli, is fantastic. So DMZ came out, cover date January 2006, so we're talking like end of 2005, and it's just another one of those titles that was a gem, and this little mini era from like 99, 2000 to like 2004, 2005 was coming to an end, but you did have these things like DMZ and even like Ed Brubaker, Steve Epting's Captain America Winter Soldier story was just, and Neil Gaiman's 1602, those things were just these little gems, little oases, just before the Heroes Reborn branding that was going on with Quesada after Jamas left. And he was doing other things before that. He was trying to throw at the wall to see what would stick with his Tsunami run, this like fake manga run that he did. And there was the Gen Next or Gen Y deal. That's what Gen Next was supposed to be for. That was what they were calling millennials before people were saying millennials, for better or for worse. That was interesting, and that didn't last long, but it did have some interesting output, some interesting product, like the Linsner covers with the Mystique run. That run itself was fun. Runaways came out of that as well with the Tsunami run. I think you had Aranya was part of the Gen Next too, maybe. So The Authority, issues number 13 and 14. This is like May and June 2000. And this is just more of that goodness, more of that out-of-box thinking that was going on with just the superhero brand in America, non-mainstream, right? Once again, people from the fringe, from the outside, the indie a little bit, they're just non-mainstream thinking. People that didn't want to write for brand identities, they kind of wanted to write more characterization based. What would this character really do if it didn't have to have restrictions on its decisions based on brands, right? Because, these people license out, these companies, Marvel, DC, they got to license out the Hulk, they got to license out Spider-Man, and that they're licensing out an image, a sensation, a feeling, an expectation that you have when you look at these characters. So if things stray too much in the main comics that they're based off of, then a lot of these people in the sales and the numbers crunchers are afraid it will affect the licensing of their decades-old brand, so to speak. People, I guess, in the business use that as an excuse a lot to not have more out-of-box thinking type of stories, more interesting, non-trope based, recycled stories all the time, right? It's kind of like some of the stuff we're getting sick of. So you had stuff like The Authority come along with Wildstorm. And once again, it's in this little mini era where this is really where like comics should have taken off from in the late 80s instead of going towards the speculator bubble. This is really what I was gunning for, and that's what made me and a bunch of other people just quit reading comics by like 89, definitely by 90. So The Authority, this was this real dark, kind of a twisted take on the Avengers. And this, when I saw that issue 14, I was like, this is it. This is what's bringing me back into comics. That was one of the things. And you got Frank Quitely. He's infamous with Mark Millar, if not Grant Morrison. So got those for 50% off, so $2 a piece. They are indirect, but the condition of these comics that I was finding, this was over at Vision Comics and Oddities. I got this Incoming Comics, his new recent buys, and the conditions were great. And if you look at that past vid I made, checking out the Boba Fett Twin Engines of Destruction, I'm looking for newsstand copies, and I did end up buying that comic. I got the $25 offer for. I turned him down and asked him for $20, and he gave me a $20 offer. So on the back, there's a slight bent in the lower left corner, but really besides that, I think it's worth it. It is a newsstand, so that's what allows, I think, more forgiveness with that little bend in the corner. Check out that video. Let me know what you think. So these are direct, and I've been seeing even direct copies for landmark issues. This is definitely landmark. This is iconic. This take on the Avengers. And we are really reaching a next phase of comic book branding. I mean, there's so much more that's to be when it comes to video games and episodic sagas, movies, and with regular silver screen output. When you're getting stuff like The Boys now for Free Comic Book Day, stuff like The Authority is going to gain a little bit more traction, I think, now in the back issue market, especially now that people are going to be avoiding buying any type of back issue that's like 10, 11 years old. The Boys, Herogasm. The Boys originated out of 2006. We're in this next level now, this new phase of, okay, everybody knows about the Avengers, Iron Man, Thor, Captain America. They've all had a trilogy at least. And, Daredevil and all the other Netflix shows on top of the Justice League movies, whether you want to say they're successful or not. The brands are getting out there. People are getting to know the regular superheroes, the foundation of the superhero genre, so to speak. And now we're getting things like The Boys, and I think eventually, sure, things like The Authority will gain traction, which will lead into things like Brat Pack and Max Immortal eventually, right? But also around 2005, 2006, we have the 2099 line that Marvel was pushing. This was actually cover date November 2004. There was also the Marvel Noir title that was coming out. So you had them messing with the future with the 2099 and a little bit of this noirish. So Marvel was going in all these different directions around that time, when they were steering away from the, like I said, that indie type of level artwork and creativity that was going on with New Marvel, and they were doing more like ideas, like 2099 or noir or Civil War or Secret War, and who's a Skrull and what's the latest gimmick now? Oh yeah, Civil War: The Return. Thank you, Joe Quesada. That was when I stopped reading the Cup of Joe blogs over at Newsarama. During that new Marvel era. Let's not forget Startling Stories banner, right? So they had issues 3 and 4 of this 4-issue limited series, but they were in direct. And I mean, my God, would you look at the condition of this? I don't care if it's in the bag still. This thing is awesome. $2 each. Richard Corbin, Brian Azzarello, new Marvel era, this neo-Renaissance era. Use the word Marvel, but it was just, Marvel was coming out of bankruptcy. That was the biggest, the most noticeable landmark, benchmark of the time, was seeing the whole Buckley, Jamas, Quesada effect, synergy that was going on. And whether it was good or bad at the time dealing with it, I mean, shit, heads were rolling. People were getting fired, people were getting hired. Around 99, 2000, Quesada had success with his Marvel Knights line, so they hired him on to be EIC. Buckley was running publishing. Bill Jamas was president. And they each had their own areas. Jamas was more into branding, checking out the covers to be more of a mainstream, non-conventional look. He was working on the Ultimate line as well. And then people like Quesada were bringing in some indie fringe writers, some non-conventional type of looks to their comics. And like I said, if you get a look that doesn't match the regular brand identity, then long term, I think the number crunchers start to freak out. And hopefully that will change, because comics are, now somebody's going to pick up a comic, they're going to be well over 18 years old. So I think people these days, especially with the online living that's been going on in the 21st century, I think people are more, they're smarter than the average. The average consumer is smarter than what they're given credit for. A lot of the marketing campaigns, even with the variant covers in the top tens, it's becoming transparent. It's becoming a trope just as much as the predictable recycled stories are of the big two. So things like Richard Corbin, when he entered into Marvel with these couple of limited series that he did the Startling Stories banner, which was 4 issues, and he also did a Luke Cage series that was supposed to be 4 issues, and then surprisingly there was a 5th issue. This is early 2000s, so besides these mainstream blogs, I guess Newsarama was one, yeah, people really didn't know, getting hints of stuff or clues and stuff, teasers and shit like that that's going on, hype campaigns with social media. So when that Cage 5th issue came out with Corbin, it was such a great treat. Richard Corbin, right, known mainly for doing horror and macabre, goth type stories. Very detailed. A lot of his roots are from Heavy Metal magazine, and now here he is doing Startling Stories banner, right? And this was really, I mean, I knew of Corbin. I recognized his art, but I didn't really know his name. I wouldn't have told you, yeah, that's Corbin, until this happened. I mean, I'd be totally honest. I did know some more indie artists from the 90s, more Fantagraphics stuff that I was being exposed to randomly, but at the end of the day, really, this exposure to Corbin with Startling Stories banner and Luke Cage really just started to open my mind. I mean, I was already exposing myself to exposing myself. I was already checking out a lot of other indie artists like Jason Lutz. He was doing sort of like Learn how they act, not what I'm saying they are. Not trying to push an agenda or a message through the characters. He was just having a story that after you read it, it would then reveal the behavior of the characters, who they are, their motivations in a sense. But you have to kind of pay attention to the story and their behavior as a whole, not mainstream like. And people like Jason Lutz doing that Unstable Molecules on top of Brian Azzarello. And once again, that Renaissance era goodness out of Vertigo with his 100 Bullets run that he was doing with Eduardo Risso. I think he also did this Gangland one shot. It's an anthology he did out of Vertigo. Vertigo Comics, Karen Berger. God, could you imagine if she went, she was the editor running Vertigo, and imagine if she ended up getting hired on to work at Marvel. Jesus. Now there'd be a day in history. You want to talk about real wokeness. Hire that woman. Have a lot of thankful fans if you did. Because we could still have your regular mainstream brand identity, whatever driven stories be the majority of the stories printed, published by Marvel, but then why not have a magazine size anthology, something thick, like Wired magazine or something that has either reprinted stories like this on top of also containing multiple story arcs that are new, but done by people like, Derek Robertson and Garth Ennis, maybe. Look at that. Tim Tyler's Hades. I didn't know anything about this book. Fathom Press, independent as hell. Hades, #1, Volume 1, 1993. Created, illustrated, and written by T. Tyler. It says 94. 1994, Fathom Press, Carbondale, Illinois. In the beginning, Mythok created the heaven and barrier rift, Hades. Hades was without order, and darkness was upon its face. Mythok saw the darkness, and it was good. That night the Baron dreamt of many a woe, and all his warrior guests, with shade and form of witch and demon and large coffin worm, were long but nightmared. Keats. Let's go through a few more random pages. Jeremiah Claw Gallery. Goblin Girl Prince by Tim Tyler. Goblin Agent 1, $10. Killer Tales by Timothy Truman. Eclipse Comics #1. Yeah. March 1985. It's like Joust. Drawing by Truman out of 82. So this issue right here, I'm thinking when I saw this, if you go to recalledcomics.com, they've got Death, the High Cost of Living, #3, Era Edition, May 1993. Page 19 and 20 in the first print of this issue are not facing each other, which led to this being collected and reprinted. DC did not seem to deem this as a big enough problem to issue a recall notice, however. So basically, the one that has the recall, from what they're showing, is the one that has... So see how this issue of Death, the High Cost of Living, issue #3, you've got this US and Canadian as well as the British pricing right there. That's the recalled version. Given it's got pretty nice spine. I decided to go for it. $2, right? Both Death, the High Cost of Living, which came out in 1993, and Death, the Time of Your Life, out of 1996, were both written by Neil Gaiman with interior pencils by Chris Bachalo. Another Vertigo Comics gem, thanks to Karen Berger. Grab this. This is out of Arrows Comics. Got that for $2. Wallace Wood's Canon. Yeah, it was Wally Wood that toned down that yellow and red costume created by Bill Everett for Daredevil and made it that streamlined red iconic Daredevil look that we know and love today. That's Wally Wood. Canon appeared every week for 2.5 years, an overseas weekly, a newspaper distributed exclusively to U.S. military bases around the world. Uncensored by commercial editorial restrictions, Wood pulled out all the stops, producing a thrilling and salacious Cold War spy serial run amok with brutal violence and titillating sex, all in an effort to boost morale and support our troops. This is from Google Books Review. Goes on and says, under the employ of our government's Central Intelligence Agency, Cannon experiences action like no other agent. Undercover and under the covers, Cannon endures nude torture by beautiful women, explosive gunplay, naked catfights, bone-crunching plastic surgery, nudity, Hitler, nihilistic lovemaking. Arrow's Comics, I think, was an imprint under Fantagraphics. Wow, Wally Wood, gotta add, he did Tales from the Crypt, House of Mystery, Weird Science Fantasy, obviously Daredevil, did Superboy comics, All-Star Comics. This series from Arrow's Comics, this Fantagraphics imprint, ran for 8 issues. And this first issue is February 1991 cover date. All right, next up, let's do a little dirty pair out of Eclipse Comics. This is issue number 1. Adam Warren is the penciler, and I think it's written by Adam Warren and Torrance Smith. And this first issue is cover date December 1988. It's a 4-issue dirty pair run at last in their own comic. Cover date August 1989. A few years later, we got Dirty Pair 2. They didn't have issue number 1, but I grabbed this gorgeous, stunningly sexy, violent cover here. Shasti Cuts Loose. Got that for $4. Dirty Pair 2, issue number 2. Some Adam Warren goodness. Look at the quality of those books coming out of the 80s. Jesus. Puts today to shame, I tell you. A little bit later than that, we got 1991's Innovation Comics, Gene Wolfe's The Shadow of the Torturer. Had to get it. Typically, I would just be buying issue number 1s. Whenever I try and flip comics I get out of the dollar bin that are just like $2, $3, not necessarily flip majorly, used just for trade bait, most shops aren't interested in them. If it's just some random, no name, just has been publisher. But I saw this cover, I was like, damn. Innovation Comics. I remember Innovation Comics had that one superhero team that they did. I checked that out for a minute. The story didn't really keep me wanting to come back for more. This, though, I mean, first of all, once again, when I heard that they had that 50% off comics that were $20 and under, and then all his new incoming comics that he had over there at Vision Comics and Oddities were in such pristine condition. Chapter 2. I like the illustrations. I like the mood that was set, countered by the colorful pages. Kind of a dark mood going on, but great setting. Number 2 of 6, September 1991. Gene Wolfe. Live that out a bit. We got ourselves 1998 300, issue number 1, a 5-issue limited series written and drawn by Frank Miller. Great little run out of Dark Horse Comics. All right, so around the same time, we got Classics Illustrated. It's cover date June 1st, 1991. That is the last issue of this volume of Classics Illustrated. Turns out it ran for 27 issues. That first issue came out, cover date February 1990. First issue was actually The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe. I did manage to find that one in, I think it was like $1 or $2 back issue bin. Really nice condition. So that, yeah, this run started in 1990, and this last issue is from 1991 by Peter Cooper. I don't know if you remember from that last vid I did, that last haul where I showed off Peter Cooper's work in the 1990 issue of Heavy Metal. It's like 1989, 1990. It's the one where Peter Cooper did the story about a fictitious presidential election where Donald Trump, I think he's running for president, and Helmsley, this large billionaire, backstabbing each other. He ends up building the wall and having these people wearing these hats as a sign of solidarity, and this whole story was prophetic. It came out like 27 years before Trump got elected. So that's a Peter Cooper story. He also did this 3-issue limited series comic, I believe, called The System. And I believe The System was a wordless comic book that Peter Cooper did. The System was a Vertigo limited series, 3 issues, out of 1996. Yeah, one of the few comics I was picking up in the 90s. Definitely those far and few between stops into a comic book shop back then. I was picking up those Death limited series. I wasn't really going to comic book shops. I wasn't going to movies. More so movies, but I was avoiding television that whole decade, and I was just looking to broaden my horizons outside of just the stuff I've been growing up with, which wasn't necessarily wrong, but like I said, it was more about just broadening my horizons, and I came across stuff like Peter Cooper's The System. And today, when I saw this Classics Illustrated, just figured, seen a lot of Peter Cooper lately. He's this overlooked sequential artist. If you ever get a chance to check him out, you see something by this guy. I mean, I got this at half off, so there are deals to be had out there, especially with these Classics Illustrated. A lot of people get these and they just go right into a bag and board, apparently. It's really easy to get these in pristine condition. So maybe I'm just lucky. Classics Illustrated. Sequential interpretations of the classics. So let's go ahead in time a few more years now, 8 years to cover date April 1999, and now we're talking more of that neo-Renaissance era that's just starting. The Authority started around the same time as well. That was Warren Ellis and Brian Hitch, I believe, started off the Authority. But more out-of-box, non-mainstream interpretations of the superhero genre, taking things to the next level, so to speak. Not exactly like, hey, this is the first time any of this stuff has happened before, but it is the first time any of this stuff has happened before, unlike this Renaissance era type gambit that was going on. I don't know how to explain it. But if you do a little research and check out the titles that were not necessarily in the top 10, you know, just check out some of the stuff that was gaining notoriety. If you look at the names, Grant Morrison, Warren Ellis, even Bendis, Brian Azzarello, so many more that I'm not mentioning. You want to talk non-mainstream, out-of-box thinking, so to speak, breaking tropes, going out of bound, expanding your horizons. So 27 issues of Planetary, and the theme of it kind of is about what I'm talking about. The last one came out December 2009, cover date, and you've got these characters that are representing eras, kind of like the pulp era, that then influenced the works of American comic books. Academics Today, if you type that in as one word in YouTube, that channel, he has got so many documentaries, like 8 to 12-minute little exposés on comic book history that are very enlightening and just kind of open up a new door, a new way of looking at the stuff you've been reading. Helps kind of connect the dots of how stuff was made and the decisions behind why people do what they do and the great works that we follow in this great hobby. So he was going off about some of the connections with the origins of superheroes. So does the channel Comic Book Historians. But Planetary was just going off about how certain eras of fiction, of comic books, these people from the pulp heroes, these characters that represented pulp heroes, kind of dying off, like a survival of existence. These characters that were used throughout the story Planetary were representing certain eras of the development of comic books throughout American history. And you started off with these pulp-based characters, and you have these, what were they called? Like archaeologists, this like secret organization that kept what was secret, was supposed to be secret. And they showed these characters that were kind of like from the Silver Age, like a Fantastic Four version of some types of characters. It's been a while since I read this. I've read all the trade paperbacks with these. I think it was like 4 trade paperback volumes originally. Issue number 21 in particular is a very stunning purple and green cover by John Cassidy. It's after those 1960s rock and roll type posters of that psychedelic era. Go Collect has a great rock and roll poster art collection that they show off. The curator for that is an OG of rock and roll poster art. Some of the first rock and roll poster arts copies that they've got, prints that they've got over at Go Collect. If you check out their website, not a fan of Go Collect. A lot of the hosts there, people associated with them, I find very cheesy and kind of like the way Paulo Costa describes them. Shout out to Paulo Costa, Portuguese Sequential fellow aficionado. If you check out the Cavern of Chaos channel every Friday, they've got this group. It's a chat that's started by Howler Mouse. Howler Mouse, Paulo Costa, those cats rap about comics in ways that you kind of wish more people would expand into talking more about the content of comics than the covers. If you really want to expand your horizons, check out that Cavern of Chaos chat live session that Howler Mouse hosts on Friday nights. Paulo Costa, though, I love the way he mentioned about how some of these guys have just been popping out of the woodwork just in the past couple of years, and it's just sort of like they're PR people. They're publicist type folk, interesting comics, but you can tell the technique that they have, that forward front profile facing with the row of CGC comics in the background, the white wall, the CGC comics lined up, and they got the light going straight on their face, and they say their spiel. It's all very well done. It's nice production, but it seems like it's more of a trend follower, a pattern trope follower, a wave rider than a wave maker, which was cool to hear. Another point of view that matches your own suspicions, kind of confirms your own suspicions. So, Planetary. Talk about suspicions, right? Planetary is a historical landmark in comic book history. Warren Ellis takes a bunch of tropes about comic books like I've been trying to describe and has certain characters personify them. So the drummer's like this technologist, can manipulate technology. Chiquita Wagner's like this super high endurance fighter, badass. Elijah Snow's like your leader. They're all detectives in this world that is trying to keep, so to speak, what is supposed to be superhero secret. All right, per wikipedia.org, Warren Ellis intended the focus of the book to be the superhero genre rather than the superheroes themselves. Quote, I wanted to do something that actually went deeper into the subgenre, exposed its roots, and showed its branches, unquote. He further states, quote, what if you had 100 years of superhero history just slowly leaking out into this young and modern superhero world of the Wildstorm universe? What if you could take everything old and make it new again? Doing what a lot of writers do with the realism of John Cassidy's artwork. $3, so I got that for $1.50. First issue of Planetary. Great condition. Such great deals. This right here, for me, I mean, stuff like with the Authority. I mean, this whole series, Planetary, ran from basically, 1998 till cover date to October 2009. So it pretty much came out while there was this transition that was going on in comics. You had this mini renaissance that was trying to struggle to gain some foothold, and it was only temporary. The only reason that foothold even happened with New Marvel was because comics had crashed, and it's kind of like that transition period before things started up again, went total mainstream. So that's what happens when you get too big. You worry too much about having the character-based asset fit the licensing. Check out Planetary if you want to get outside of that loop, that mainstream, repetitive, recycled plotline loop. Planetary, the Authority. If you want to go a little bit older, you've got Max Immortal and Brat Pack by Veach. Yeah, I got that just because it was a newsstand. Yeah, I didn't really care about Fantastic Four at that time, but a $2 comic book with no creases on its spine as a newsstand. Yeah. I got the Extreme X-Men, that Chris Claremont comic book. That annual from 2001. It's interesting how they're labeling them annual 2001 with the year instead of the number that was going on at that time. Once again, I just look at it as like a little landmark, a sign of that New Marvel era, using that annual 2001. So that is a September 2001 cover date. Jeff Loeb story with Kevin McGuire art, interior, and cover. So in January 2005 was the first issue of Iron Man Volume 4, number 1. And he didn't have issue number 1 or 2 in the back issues, but this came out in 2005, so we're talking right around Civil War, Neil Gaiman, Kubert's 1602. You'd have Civil War was coming up, and Ed Brubaker, Steve Epting's Winter Soldier run. These real interesting story arcs, these landmark story arcs that had a lot to say, just as far as subjects of conversation. There's a part in this Iron Man Extremis run where he goes to meet this old professor or some old doctor that he knew, a scientist, where they were going off comparing notes just about being a futurist and signs of the times and different ways of interpreting history and technology, and it just the dialogue with that alone just shows the caliber of Warren Ellis's writing skills. But as far as with characterization, I mean, you have somebody that's a futurist, that's a scientist, Tony Stark. So why not have a comic book that has some intelligent conversation about science, something that then can be taken further, applying it towards how people will behave in the future, right? The guy's a futurist. And make Iron Man at least one title of Iron Man, whether you want to call it Invincible Iron Man or Iron Man the Futurist, whatever. But have the subject matter be written by a friend of Neil deGrasse Tyson, man. Call that guy up. Have him and some other people contribute to a 12-issue run of Iron Man. And they can have some really cool, interesting banter. There's so many different directions, not just comic books, but the superhero genre and Marvel Comics can go in. And that's just really what I'm getting at when I'm talking about, how great new Marvel is and this age of Renaissance, and how these independent and fringe writers came in and took mainstream comics and just kind of broke the mold. Gotta let the ideas and the dialogue go outside of the recycled mainstream plot lines. And one of the ways to do that is to use science as a subject of conversation, of dialogue, more than just a MacGuffin to go after. I mean, Shang-Chi, right? That movie that's coming out, Shang-Chi, those 10 rings are MacGuffins. That should be a movie about martial arts. And, it's one of the values of Chinese culture, isn't it? And why not have that be the basis of Shang-Chi? Have it be a movie about martial arts, not chasing 10 rings. But hey, that's just a trailer, right? We don't want to judge a book by a cover in an age where people buy variant covers over the quality of a story arc in comic books, right? No, what am I talking about? This is Iron Man Extremis, shit. It's another thing, too, with Iron Man Extremis that was so profound. When you get back into dialogue describing people's motivations, characterization, it was just one of the key points too that it was describing about American culture was the part of the story where that girl, she was just kind of minding her own business. She was stuck in the town. She hated the small town. When she came across that guy, that he was like some type of hick extremist, real brutal motivation going on with this guy, and she states off the cuff her point of view about the United States. She had some American flag that instead of stars, I think it had the Nazi swastikas on it. And he said something to her while he was passing through this town, the guy, the villain that was infected by the extremis virus. And she said her opinion of the United States, and since he was all pro-hick nationalist, he killed her on the spot. And I gotta say, in a lot of these jobs that I've had, I've worked on the East and the West Coast, the North and the South. I've worked in some big names, some large corporate brand names, engineering, aerospace, tech, some banking, and a lot of people that I've met with openly talk about lining up and killing either country folk or city dwellers, or certain types of races or certain types of gals, ways of living, openly. Some fucked up shit that I think really should be incorporated to a certain degree, more so than others in comics. Even just, if you look at a lot of the comics and how the people act, a lot of them look like they're written for people in the 20th century. You walk up to somebody and talk to them and they respond to you and they talk back. That doesn't happen in early 21st century former USA, right? They gotta act like you don't exist. You're a customer. The person's then they have to act upset that they have to, get you a drink or get you your movie ticket or whatever. It's not a gripe, people. It's what's going on. So why not incorporate stuff like that in comics? How people just ignore somebody next to them tapping on their phone, or they only use text messages in the same room as the person that they only want to communicate with. It's also in the same room as them. It's like, what the hell? Why not show superhero teams doing that? That's why stuff like, Peter Milligan and Mike Allred's X-Force, that version that they did from X-Force issue 116 to 129 was brilliant. That's just one example of taking that superhero genre and taking it beyond the regular traditional tropes. You got Planetary, you got The Authority, you got Peter Milligan, Mike Allred's X-Force. Sequential Geek's taking you out of school tonight. It is Saturday night. No, it's not. No, it's not anymore. It is Sunday morning. It's definitely Sunday morning. But yeah, Adi Ganov. Beautiful artwork. It was his designs that were used for the Iron Man movie. Was it John Favre was doing? Let's go back in time a little bit. Got myself a reader copy of Iron Man number 182. Written by Denny O'Neil. That interior pencils is Luke McDonald. Iron Man 182 out of 1984. The Iron Man Demon in a Bottle stories ran in issues 120 through 128. So right at the end of issue 169 is when Colonel James Rhodes dons the suit and title of Iron Man. And then in issue 170, I guess you could say it's the first cover appearance of James Rhodes as Iron Man, but his face is silhouetted. So, I suppose you could say it's 171 has him in full armor. 181 then shows the back of his head. Maybe 195. Yeah, issue 195, I guess, would really be... It's that issue that has, like, the close-up, the profile of the face, Iron Man helmet in one half of the cover, James Rhodes on the other half with Shaman of Alpha Flight. Sitting up there, Indian style. That third eye region of his forehead. Issue number 195 of Iron Man is pretty much the first cover appearance of James Rhodes as Iron Man, really. Full front profile of his face where it's like obvious it's James Rhodes. So I got this nice reader copy here for $1.82. For $1.50 actually. It's issue 182. Yeah. We got some water damage right here, people. Nice cold winter day. Get your drunk on, Stark. Got kids being shown what it's like to walk into a store and get alcohol. Just have those nice young adults emulate this hero. There he is, sitting on the side of the street, living life, Shit, that's like a lot of indie comics. Krumpholtz out of Denver. Stories like this. Probably also Vince Giver. Bukowski stories. Miller Van Sciver. Look at that. Nobody knows from us. Wow, a lot of walking along the street drinking this issue. Oh, we got explosions. Jim Shooter, EIC. Printed Circuits is the letter page title. Yeah. So we're talking 1984. You know, I gotta say, looking at this, we're talking here, you know, as far as you look at the year when this book came out and the struggles that they're depicting, he's like delusional, I think, and he's saying, talking about dealing with pain and the anguish that's being depicted here. You know, I gotta say, this is, you know, I'm talking about earlier about a comic book depicting somebody being a futurist and going off about science fiction, where, you know, we also have mental illness being depicted in a comic book in the 80s. It's a little flashback here to Marvel Superhero Secret Wars, by the way. That was a little gateway that they all disappeared into. If I remember correctly, it was one of the teases with Marvel Superhero Secret Wars, that first 12-issue crossover. It's like, I think, what, 1 month they disappeared in this like gateway, this structure that popped up in Central Park, and then the next issue they came back, and then you had to, the next month they came back, and they're all talking about how they've been gone in this adventure someplace, and so you kind of had to read the 12-issue series Marvel Superhero Secret Wars to find out what happened. And then while Marvel Superhero Secret Wars was going on, you were dealing with current day now, so that lost year, that lost time that all those superheroes spent when they disappeared in that Beyonder world, you had to read the Marvel Superhero Secret Wars to find out what happened. Why did Spider-Man come out wearing this black suit, for example? You know, what was the deal with Molecule Man? Their relationship was on the rocks. Peter Rasputin and Kitty Pryde. That was one of the results that came out too of Marvel Superhero Secret Wars. So you got a little reference to Marvel Superhero Secret Wars going on here. This is, like I said, out of 1984. I am bringing y'all to school. Talking my ass off. What next? All right, a few years later, after that Iron Man issue number 182, we got ourselves Ann Nocenti and Art Adams, Longshot. Issue number 1 right there is the first appearance of Longshot. Cover date September 1985. That's Ann Nocenti doing the writing, with Art Adams premiering as your mainstream greatness right here. When Longshot came out, it was just fucking cool. Like, I mean, here you got a guy, he's not a mutant, but he's with the X-Men. He's from another dimension, genetically engineered. Just that whole Mojo verse, kind of very telling of what's to come with everybody plugged in to their computers. It's just this three-fingered badass, man. Just the way Art Adams would depict this guy's acrobatics. She's jumping around, whipping knives. It's really fucking cool look. Very elvish, like an elf. The look of Longshot. I got a great deal on this. It's fantastic condition. I mean, look at that spine. Right, there's a slight crease right there. Back looks great. And the pages are bright. This is just very unique. It's a really cool take on somebody with paranormal abilities. A cool take on that superhero genre. Like in the 80s, I wasn't really following like New Comic Book Wednesdays and what key books were. So when this came out, I really didn't pay attention to it until that issue that had She-Hot in those hot shorts, She-Hulk in those shorts. That's the cover that caught my eye. And then trying to get issue number 1 of Longshot took me like a year of searching. And then I think it was like a distant relative that bothered to pay attention, ended up getting me the first issue for Christmas. 88, I think, 88, 89. So cool. Yeah, he was always like the cool look. He always had a little bit more of an edge to him, yet he was not edgy. His personality was very naive. Stranger in a strange land. I believe the hot book right now with Longshot is the first appearance of Mojo, which is issue number... I don't remember, actually. I think it might be issue number 3. It's issue number 4 is the one with She-Hulk that I was talking about, by the way. Longshot issue number 3 is the first appearance of Mojo. That bright orange red just popping right here. Got that for $3 for issue number 6. Check it out. Let's go a little bit more modern now. The remaining Marvel books that I got are around that era, just like after New Marvel ended. Less emphasis on out-of-box, creative, non-brand identity-driven stories to more of like gimmicks, or you've got the Ultimate Wolverine versus Hulk director's cut. Right? People were buying this because it was a director's cut and because it had that guy that did Lost. See the specialness of the sketch lines? Pay a premium for that, baby. So this is a $5 cover price, and I spent $3 on it. 50% off, and talk about delays. Jesus. This was a 6-issue limited series, right? So it came out in December 2005 was the first issue. And it ended in May 2009. It's very anticlimactic. This issue compiles issues 1 and 2 of the original run. And this could have been a great story. This could have been a big deal. Think about it. In Ultimates Volume 2, issue number 3, that was when Nick Fury and the government got together and they had Banner left off in some naval ship where they detonated a gamma nuke. They decided to nuke Banner in like the middle of the Atlantic or Pacific, middle of the ocean. So what happened to Banner? Where'd he go? This is the story that shows Hulk in the middle of the Himalayas, somewhere in the middle of Nepal, I guess, just trying to do his own thing. He's living large, Frazetta style. You know what I'm saying? And I guess the government sent Wolverine. It made sense for Wolverine to listen to the government to go bug somebody that wants to be left alone. I mean, if that's one thing Wolverine would want to do, it would be to live like the Hulk, right? I think a lot of those guys, like the Hulk and Wolverine, are more kindred spirits in a lot of ways. You know, especially this version of the Hulk. He's green, but he's kind of like a Joe Fix-It type of personality. He's a little bit more conscious, and really the claim to fame of this story isn't so much what happened to Banner after Volume 2 of the Ultimates, that third issue when they nuked him. It's more just this is Wolverine getting ripped in half, really. This was so drawn out, so poorly executed. Why did I get it? Because it was less than $5, and it is cool with that Leno Francis Yu artwork. Although it was anticlimactic, I do find this worthwhile as far as collection goes, as far as collectors. Not necessarily a key book, but it's I don't want to quite say trade bait, but just as a collector, as a Marvel Comics fan, this is like the tail end of comics with Marvel. This is when Marvel was ending. This is part of Marvel's last dying breaths, as far as I'm concerned, really. But as far as a Marvel fan goes, you know, it's another encounter of Wolverine and the Hulk, and it's got that Leno Francis Yu artwork. If it wasn't so drawn out and they paid a little bit more respect and attention to the interest fans would have on just what exactly happened to the Hulk in the Ultimate Universe, and how would an interaction with this Ultimate Wolverine, the Hulk, turn out. And there was so much that was going on with the Ultimate Universe, an opportunity to show these heroes being modernized, that they really just dropped the ball with. Showing the Ultimate Universe as something more as a litmus paper test, as a testing ground, a sandbox, more like a beta workshop for Marvel's 616. You know, that's disappointing. It makes you feel like you're being taken advantage of as a fan when you look at all the money that you spend on all the comics with the Ultimate runs. You know, it's off-putting when you're a large company, especially post-Disney buyout. But Marvel was on the upswing. If they were able to get Damon Lindelof's name on a comic, you know, that was it. You know, we're going back to gimmicks now. You know, Kevin Smith, let's put his name on a comic. Hey, even though Damon Lindelof here had delays, at least he finished his story. Unlike, it's more than what Kevin Smith can say, like with that Bullseye run. You know what I'm saying? Like too much about, hey, look who's here. Give us your money. You know, that bait and switch Quesada did a lot. And he was like, damn, he even did it with the artists. You know, he got my eye with quietly doing the artwork on that run with Grant Morrison, New X-Men. But thankfully, you know, the Ethan Van Sciver work kicked ass, and the Igor Corday work was great, but then when they switched it up, it was disappointing. Especially when you would have Frank Quitely on the artwork, on that cover work of New X-Men, and you open it up, and it's just like, even, you know, and Quesada would admit, even in his fucking Newsarama blog that he had at the time, and he was hyping up his BS, he would say that's one of the techniques of being an editor, one of the tricks of the trade, that bait and switch with artists, get the reader hooked, and then you can save money with a different artist, a less popular artist. later down the road in the story arc. It's like, what the fuck, man? Follow through, have the interiors match the cover, quit switching up artists. If you got a large behemoth like Disney owning you, you should be able to be subsidized enough to have stuff come out on time, or just tell us it's going to be semi-monthly. Yeah. Enough said. This was supposed to be one of the coolest limited series that was going to come out of the Ultimate Comics line. It was this Ultimate Wolverine and Hulk that you thought was going to turn around the Ultimate line. I'll tell you something right there. Whenever you think you got to have something turn around something, whenever you think you got to have like the next big thing help out your brand, help out whatever you're a fan of, might be time to step back and take a little break with that spending and wait for it to come out in the discount bin. So that was what? First issue 2005, Ultimate Wolverine, Hulk, ended 2009. Also around that time is Ultimate Wolverine versus Hulk, at least when it started. You had the Joe Quesada 6-issue limited series, Daredevil Father. The first issue, the first printing of the first issue came out, cover date June 2004, and this is the director's cut. Once again, we're talking Marvel's last breaths, less characterization, less interesting stories, less out-of-box thinking. If you want to expand your demographics, then kind of got to steer away from the same recycled stories, the same recycled gambits, which Quesada was doing with this Daredevil Father run. It was this emotional, touching story. This is some emotional Daredevil story, right? Daredevil's got the hang-ups, the drama. So, that whole guilt-driven angst deal, mixing that with Catholicism, shit. Daredevil Father, issue number 2, first appearance of this kind of an anti-hero, superhero team out of Hell's Kitchen, call themselves the Centurions. And it is a fictional superhero team. It's based out of Hell's Kitchen, created by Joe Quesada. This comic here, it's written and illustrated by Joe Quesada. One of his pals in the biz is Danny Miki, a big name inker. And there's some videos on YouTube. I think it's Eduardo Miranda Rodriguez interviews Joe Quesada when he did the original art exhibition for this comic book in New York City. He had this art exhibit, and there's some interviews with Quesada where he's talking about the Centurions and his Hispanic, Cuban cultural heritage that he basically infused in this story. And a large degree of that is with this superhero group, the Centurions. It's like a magic-based superhero team. It says here out of Wikipedia, each Centurion have their own special powers, which are derived from the Orishas, deities of the ancient Centurion religion that they practiced during their adolescent years. And basically this group was started by this one guy, Nestor. His father was killed by gangsters. He was working for them. They wanted this guy Nestor. They wanted his father to get rid of his own son, because his son started this neighborhood watch group. It ended up growing into this vigilante superhero team. One of the cool things about the Centurions is that they are not registered as, I guess you'd call it the Superhero Registration Act. Yeah, that ain't their thing. That's one of the rare things about these superhero teams. Everyone's got to get registered or be under some type of special umbrella. It's very 21st century. The presence of S.H.I.E.L.D., for example, didn't really have the presence that it has today. That was something that started to be depicted as of Brian Michael Bendis, as of his new Avengers run, really. Having things be based out of some type of shield. A lot of that was from the Ultimates too, right? Mark Millar. So, you've got that time variant authority too. That's another zeitgeist sign of the times. I think it's just, I don't know, getting people used to having some type of centralized source monitor them and keep track of what they're doing. I don't know. But really, the old days, the OG days, and really I think was part of the heart of Marvel that made it unique and that gave it some character and something that was more gripping than other stories that kept your interest was that you had to watch how Spider-Man, how Peter Parker had to fend for himself. You had to watch how the X-Men had to fend for themselves. They were like a semi-underground organization, the X-Men, and that usually would imply, especially if you're going to represent something like how they're representing minorities or people that are being persecuted. If you're persecuted, you have low budget. You have difficulty getting resources, assistance, help. That's one of the things with the X-Men that when I started getting all these uniforms and bases and this international presence, as of like pretty much the tail end of the 80s, definitely throughout the 90s, it didn't really jive with me. It didn't really make sense to me. If you're going to be some type of underground persecuted organization like with these mutants, you'd be a little bit more disenfranchised, a little bit more like, tough times, the opposite of the Avengers, basically, opposite of the Fantastic Four. So part of that struggle, right? If they want to represent the struggle, the mutant struggle, then I don't think they'd be as hooked up and have all these centralized decision making going on, like with the Illuminati too. The concept of the Illuminati was really cool. A lot of people were talking about that at the time. That was kind of like the zeitgeist. Why don't we have one guy who represents magic and one guy who represents technology and one person who represents, mutants or psychic abilities, kind of all get together and kind of nip problems in the bud, right? So that was a cool idea with the Illuminati, I gotta say, but it did reflect a lot that was going on with the times. Back to Daredevil Father, I gotta say, if you want to talk about the times, right? If you're a child, right? If you're like under the age of 13, you're not Hispanic origin, you're a minority in North America. I don't know if it's because the largest population is India, right? They're going to surpass China by 2035, 2040 in population. They'll still be growing. India right now has the largest population growth. They're not as regulated as China, so I would say as a market, I think the demographic is India. It's no longer the types of demographics that are within North America. We don't have those trade barriers anymore to have things like nerds and people who play sports or people who are this and that really matter anymore. I think a lot of that music, art, food, so forth, clothing, it's going to be more and more influenced and revolved around what's going on in India. They're not going to create a separate product and marketing team for one for North America, one for India. To a certain degree, they will, but I think everyone's all about cutting corners and making things quote unquote more efficient. So they're going to sell the same type of products in India as they are here. I mean, we got Walmarts here. They're going to have those goods be pumped into these large outlets and this fake ass country, and everyone's going to have the same everything. And that's going to be whatever is the largest demographic to a large degree, to the main degree, the mainstream degree. And that's another reason why I'm thinking, the superhero genre doesn't start producing more out of box, more non-mainstream, more non-20th century type books. If they don't do that, they're going to be looked at as something that is old. They're going to be looked at as something that is the old regime. They're going to be looked at as something that is corporate, that is mainstream, that is predictable. And eventually people are just going to be like, these brands are owned by corporate conglomerates that are ruining the environment, for example. And people's knee-jerk reaction this next generation could be to reject superheroes just based on that type of premise alone. I mean, we had people in that other end of the spectrum in the 50s with the McCarthy era burning comic books. Well, when that groundwater supply starts reaching depreciating returns by the late 2030s and other factors start adding up. I'm not being all dooms and gloom. I'm trying to apply a little bit of futurist thinking here, and people might have like a reaction to those corporate conglomerates in more ways than one. Just like you had the book burnings of the 50s with the McCarthy era, with the Red Scare, you could have book burnings or some form of rejection of superhero brand identities from the big two. Who knows in 10 years, the way things turn out, if they don't fix their image, really, things can turn like you won't believe. Ask any OG collector that's lived through these changes. The way you can be left hanging by these large companies in more ways than one. It's happened before, and then it happens again. You can't tell me it ain't gonna happen again. So I diversify my collection. I check out alternative stuff. I check out more indie takes on these superheroes that could be applied more in like 10 years. Not something that's so much riding off of the same tropes as the past 50 years. And I'm not talking about cultural tropes or racial tropes or trying to push an agenda type tropes. I'm not trying to talk about another type of political trope either, like where I think every superhero should have a gut and a gun and hate people who don't play sports, whether it's liberal or conservative, whatever. No, I'm talking about more just diversified forms of sequential characterization. Keep the brand identity stuff, that's fine, but expand the different types of publications to satisfy that more of an adult demographic, because those are the people that are reading your comics, and yeah, we're getting sick of the same old. Yeah. $5. Kevin Eastman and Simon Beasley. This is actually opened out of Kitchen Sink Press, 1994, I believe. I want to get this haul moving. But we got a little stuff in here. Yep. Thumping Guts. The Bees. $1993. Copyright. This envelope. Got a handful of comics left, y'all. Thank you very much for sharing this free comic book day, 50% off voyage with me. All right, here's what's left. Look at that. Star Wars Republic, Mace Windu Unleashed. It's a direct edition of issue number 66. Got that for $3.50. It's a Clone Wars comic, don't you know? Star Wars Republic ran for 83 issues, ended in 2006. This issue number 66 is actually out of 2004, cover date June. Yeah, I don't know what the deal is with the Star Wars Republic numbering. Star Wars Republic is continued from Dark Horse's Star Wars series, starting with issue number 46. The title focuses mainly on the time around episode 2 and the Clone Wars. The series lasted until issue 83, after which it was retitled as Star Wars Dark Times, following the events of Star Wars Episode 3. The series had a new number 1 and a new title, but the indicia still states Star Wars Republic and continues to count on from issue 84 and on. 2004. Got that for $3.50. Nice deal. Let's go a little bit earlier now to Star Wars Tales. That's a nice newsstand copy, isn't it? I've been looking for this issue, newsstand copy. You know, I've been mentioning how I got that other image, that photograph issue of Harrison Ford in Star Wars Underworld. That issue number 3. And that's out of 2002. Really nice, crisp Star Wars Tales. Issue 11, newsstand copy. That's Star Wars Underworld issue 3. That's got a Harrison Ford photo as well as I don't know the details as far as the history with Dark Horse printings of Harrison Ford. I mean, I think any previous image of Harrison Ford was more like an illustration, a painting, like that Marvel Originals run of Star Wars issue, 81? Tells the story of Boba Fett, how he survived the Sarlacc pit. That was more like a painting, like an illustration of Harrison Ford. I think the use of him, his actual likeness, his image in a photograph. I mean, this is Star Wars Tales 11. This is out of 2002. Then there's Star Wars Tales number 19, the B cover for that. That is an image of Han Solo. It's a photograph of Harrison Ford. And that is the same image. They're reusing these images in these newer, former Marvel versions of Star Wars that have come out 2016. So I've been trying to find this copy of Star Wars Tales 11 on eBay as a newsstand in at least very fine. And I totally got a score here, getting this for $3. Psyched. Nice newsstand copy of Star Wars Tales 11. Well, this Alan Grant story, it's got art by Herman Mejia. This artist is fucking phenomenal. I don't know anything about the movie people being shrunk down, man. But I do know that the art in this baby is truly fantastic. This is $24 they charged me. Don't you know? So only got 20% off this. This was not half off. Used to be able to find this in the dollar bins. This is Paul Pope's Batman Year 100. I've got a run of 1 of 4, plus a couple of other copies of issue number 1 that I found in the back issue bins, discount bins. If you get a chance, once again, you want to check out something that's your non-conventional superhero story, check out Batman Year 100. He does a lot of stuff that's futuristic, like 100%. It's like about living in New York City in the future. And this is under the same vein. It's Batman Year 100. Really cool storyline. Really great take on Batman. If anybody else has read this, let me know your opinion of it. I really enjoyed reading this. It's really cool artwork, and it's what I was looking for. I got a Dynamic Forces certified signature of Paul Pope. This was way back when, right when this initially came out. Year is this? February 2006 is the cover date. And that's my haul, y'all. Thank you so much for watching. I don't know if you remember, but Vision Comics, they had this Halloween special that they did. That was the first comic that they had produced. It was a lot of pinups mainly. They've got 2 printings now. They got this Vision Comic special that's $5, and then they've got a printing of this limited edition that is going to be a signature series. It's going to have the cover signed by all the contributing artists. Skip through a couple pages here. I got my Tomorrow's order in the mail. Half of it at least. The other half hasn't been published yet. So I'm going to make a video of that next. So many comics. So many great deals. Spent a lot of money. Had a lot of good times checking out the back issues. Finding deals. Let me know what y'all think of this find right here for $3.50. The Star Wars Republic 66. You think that's overrated? Let me know what you think. Thank y'all for watching. You know who I be. That Sequential Geek. That's right.
Is that it? The name of this band is Talking Heads, and the name of this song is Psycho Killer.
That Talking Heads recording is out of 1975. CBGB's. Happy Free Comic Book Day. Thanks for watching, y'all.
Listen to me now, I passed the test.
Peace.
I think I'm cute, I think I'm the best. Skirt, I don't like that style. Don't criticize what I know is worthwhile. Psycho killer, qu'est-ce que c'est? Run, run away. Psycho killer, qu'est-ce que c'est? Thank you.